Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your precious time and joining us here today. Tonight I'd like to introduce you with the concept of crowdfunding. I'm sure most of you have heard already about Kickstarter or Indiegogo and things like this. But in Hungary this is yet an unknown phenomenon, and we have the mission to introduce crowdfunding here within a short period of time. I'm an economist. My name is Nóra Szeles. I graduated at Corvinus and then went to Purdue in the US. And I have actually ever since I started my career, I have always been on the capital market. I started at the Budapest Stock Exchange and introduced the market of futures and options trading back in the 90s. And I'm fond of market development challenges, which include a lot of learning, and it needs extreme enthusiasm. And this is the challenge today as well with the concept of crowdfunding. And let me introduce a short part of my team. Kata, who is in charge of PR and marketing. You see, we are fully equipped with women, and we hope to introduce actually a very feminine business here in Hungary under the roof of crowdfunding. And then Andy, who is in charge of startups coming to our portal. So I'm sure you guys could also, as well talk to her later at the later session. And Claudia, she's our analyst. She's extremely aware of international tendencies and regulations regarding crowdfunding that I'm going to summarize in the upcoming, let's say, maximum half an hour. So what is extremely important about crowdfunding is that it has existed ever since people started to participate in communities, because there have always been projects which lacked capital. Some of the people had ideas and the other people had money, so they always went out to beg them to loan or to fund their projects. But it has, before the internet, was always local. So it didn't get the access to global reputation. But since the internet has started to widespread in the 2008 and 9, and especially since the Web 2, and that means the social media has been introduced, the concept of crowdfunding has become global. The first platforms were called Kickstarters, which are actually simple web shops that list projects instead of single t-shirts, projects that beg for money, and investors or backers who loan or back or invest in those projects. So this is the simple concept of that, but nevertheless it has become already an alternative financing way of startups and SMEs. Why is it crucial to underline all the time that it that these are startups or SMEs who definitely need money? Because these companies or projects are not yet bankable. So the very concept of crowdfunding is to allow access to capital for those projects that are not yet bankable and would not survive without additional capital at a certain stage. This is a very small little picture that just shows how it goes. First, we have the friends and family circle that you are all aware of. Friends and family and fools, it's sometimes called, when your nephew, who is extremely talented, asks for using your garage. And as I learned from Imre once upon a time, it doesn't matter where this garage is. It doesn't matter whether it's here in Budapest or in California, but never mind. So, but then you have already, most of the time you produce a prototype out of this money. And there you show this prototype that is very sexy, very funny, but you don't have the money to go to the market. We here in Hungary are very familiar with loads of stories of starved people who were genius in creating a new product, but they starved because they could not get it to the market, because they lacked, first of all, the money, second, the know-how how to get it to the market. Then, in ancient times, before crowdfunding, VCs or the angel community existed only, to which we had startuppers little or rare access to. If those startups were fortunate enough to meet Imre and you guys, then they had the chance to find an angel investor who then would decide whether to invest in the startup or not. But the startup could not go publicly known, and if it didn't find an angel investor, then it starved after a few months. And it couldn't even reach a higher level of development, a larger size, when it could already attract a VC or a bank loan. This is the very short story. So the crowdfunding, which is a simple web shop-based phenomenon, provides access to capital globally, or at least in a very wider circle of possible prospective investors. This is why I always call this very short picture "Mind the Gap," borrowing the London Tube's slogan, as you all know, that crowdfunding fills in a gap that has not existed before. Then this is why it gained extreme interest already 9 or 10 years ago. When I got motivated for the phenomenon of crowdfunding, I could even say that I am more or less obsessed with this, is when I read in 2013 the survey of the World Bank, that you can also find it until today on the internet, that defined these following verbs: crowd diligence, dormant capital, involvement of dormant capital, and which I didn't list, the wisdom of the crowd. It means that the crowdfunding campaign that is launched on a portal, I will show you at a later stage a more detailed picture about this, publishes a short description and a video that I'm sure you must have seen quite a few, that introduces the team, the concept, business model, and the terms and conditions of how to invest or how to back that particular campaign. After that short introduction that lasts for you to read 5 to 6 minutes only, you can start to raise questions on that particular website, on its blog or its forum publicly, once you are a registered user of that crowdfunding site. When you start to raise questions, then the crowdfunder must sit there, behind his own screen, and reply to you accordingly in public to your questions. This is a huge access to information that is an extremely new feature of any kind of, in comparison to any kind of other investments. And this is only provided by the crowdfunding website. If you are an angel investor, you handle face-to-face or peer-to-peer. You don't publish this conversation. Third party could not chime in and comment on it. And that also means that your information will probably be more or less limited and will be up to the crowdfunder or startup what he's going to tell to you. But if there's a crowd behind that website, they can raise lots of questions. This campaign lasts 45 to 60 days. During these 45 and 60 days, on average, according to international statistics, more than 5,000 questions are raised in a campaign. Sometimes only a few hundred, sometimes over 10,000. And during this Q&A session, people start to get confidence or lose their confidence in that campaign and decide immediately whether to invest or not. And this is what the World Bank recognized as the crowd diligence. You know the term due diligence, which is carried out by extremely expensive lawyers and auditors. Instead, this very cheap way of publishing that information that is not included in the campaign or it is hidden ensures a huge transparency during that campaign. And this is evidence proved already, and this is what I actually fell in love with this phenomenon of communication, and I'm doing my PhD in communication of crowdfunding campaigns actually right now. But I extremely believe in this phenomenon of transparency and of the wisdom of the crowd that would then raise the question that perhaps a professional investor would not. So these are very simple, everyday questions. And I realized it myself because I do keep on investing small amounts of money. This is the other feature of the crowdfunding campaign that is very interesting. So I keep on raising questions on other websites to the crowdfunders. And last time I was, let me put it that way, almost in love with the campaign, and I almost invested in that. 500 euros, which is not a little money for me. This is something I would definitely consider already. So I did raise the question, and I knew who was going to answer because I know the guy in person and who is a real professional in crowdfunding. And he could not really convince me with his answer immediately without doing a huge research on it. So I sort of started to change my mind, and in the end I did withdraw my initial investment. So this crowdfunding, this communication phase is something that is extremely unique in crowdfunding, and that ensures, according also to the World Bank, that there is almost no scandal, there is almost no cheating in this industry worldwide. Although, as I mentioned to you, I come from capital markets, from the stock exchange, where they get that big head that there is this extremely prospectus, which is audited and signed by auditors and brokerage houses for millions of Hungarian forints when you want to go to public and when you want to list your shares on the stock exchange and when you want people to invest in your company. That is called the prospectus that needs to be permitted by the National Bank of Hungary, which is the chief regulatory watchdog. And this single, let's call it stamp, that the National Bank issues when you file for an IPO costs 100 million forint, I just heard in the radio, including all its preparation and all the work that is behind. So that is extremely expensive to go public in general, worldwide. That is also included in the textbooks, actually. Whereas in crowdfunding, this prospectus is actually replaced by this communication phase, which is, let's say, almost free of charge, and ensures, in the end of the day, a higher rate of transparency. So this is extremely interesting for me, and this is why crowdfunding is becoming stronger and stronger and taking and shows worldwide growth of 25 to 30% annual growth rate since 7 or 8 years. Of course, I must add before you guys, if some of you are economists, would immediately remind me that during this period we have not faced any down market or any crisis. Of course, we must adapt to that as well. So what happened was in 2012 in the US, the regulator over there, it was yet in the midst of the crisis. It was a deep, an extremely bad period of the economy, even in the US. The regulatory bodies of the US recognized that the startups and these SMEs stopped, went bankrupt due to the lack of access to capital. And because they all went bankrupt, there was a huge unemployment of the US during that time, because the startups, if they were not financed, they could not employ, of course, no one, neither could the SMEs. And this is why they accepted already back to then, already some websites already functioned, like the Kickstarter. And then the regulator recognized that if we provide access to capital easier than before to smaller companies like startups and SMEs, then the unemployment rate will probably decrease. And this is why the Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Your Business Act, was then accepted. That introduced that is called today the first regulation of crowdfunding as well. Ever since, all European countries, except for Hungary until today, have also implemented their own crowdfunding regulation that regulates this whole process that I have just described before, and would like to go on in further detail. But before I would go on, let me mention one more definition of the dormant capital, which is also, as an economist, extremely impressive and important, that as crowdfunding enables investors to invest small amounts of money, 5,000 forint, 10,000 forint, you would not have to allocate your existing investments and pulling it out from whatever securities or deposits or government bonds, but you just put it in from your pocket or from your current cash flow. We in Hungary call it from the pillow, you know. So, and this is what the World Bank went after that phenomenon and proved that large amounts of dormant capital, which is called dormant capital, is then involved this way, through this channel, into the economy and starts to work over there. So due to these two reasons, the involvement of dormant capital and the large rate of transparency, the World Bank started to subsidize and to communicate about crowdfunding very positively already back 5 years ago. So this is the macroeconomic reason behind that. This is just a very short overview, quite a boring picture about how a crowdfunding site would work. To summarize it in 3 sentences, as I said, it's a simple web shop. It's not that simple actually, but let's call it a web shop. People list their projects according to the rules of that site, of that portal. Those rules are really elaborated, so I would not say it's very simple. It's a bit more complicated than listing a new T-shirt in a web shop. Nevertheless, this is the supply side. This is usually then regulated on a national level, how this supply side can improve or can be filled in. So how new projects can get listing on crowdfunding sites. On the other hand, investors gather from everyday investors. There's a definition of everyday investor who just then would like, just for fun actually, invest small amounts of money, 1, 2 euros, $2, $10, $10, $20 on a regular basis. When he sees something fancy is going on, he gives it a try. And then there are lots of angels gathering who then would act as so-called lead investors in the project. So they pick listed campaigns, or they get familiar with the ecosystem and start to get involved before a project is listed, and would take on the role of a lead investor. And in the case of larger projects that demand capital over, let's say 50,000 euros or 100,000 euros, a lead investor would play a crucial role, just as in a VC investment or in a angel investment, would define the terms how he or she would invest into that project. And once it goes public on the website, then the third-party investors can join that investment already according to that terms and conditions that had been elaborated with the angel and the crowdfunder. And the inclusion of a lead investor would ensure also to the campaign holder or crowdfunder that he or she wouldn't have to deal with hundreds of small investors, which could then possibly make a big mess on the cap table. So on the if you must deal with hundreds of shareholders, then of course that's very administrative and costly and messy. So, but when you have a lead investor, who is usually an angel or a VC or someone who is specialized on this new industry like this, then all the new third-party investors would then join the term sheet as it is already published on the website. Then VCs and any other institutional investor can as well participate. And this is our mission here that I just borrowed as well from the European Investment Fund, which is the largest European VC fund's chief trader, whom I met 2 months ago at the Congress in Brussels, that he sees the future of the VC investment not only, but that's his mission also, to ensure that the more and the bigger projects get co-funded with the VC and the crowd. And once the VC joins the crowd or vice versa, that ensures the best or the most efficient funding for that particular startup or SME. So, and in between, there is, for example, us, the Tőkeportál, which I'm going to introduce yet in a few sentences, which just ensures that the information flow is regulated, is in accordance with every internal and external rules, and of course, its basic interest to provide good projects, so it mentors and incubates possible campaign funders, possible crowdfunders, and also advertises and communicates with investors in order to get them registered on the portal and provide for the crowd. So the portal itself is the marketplace. The portal does not handle the capital invested. It is handled at a third party financial institution. In our case, it will be Keller, the central depository. So all investors transfer their money to that particular project to Keller. And once the campaign goes to end successfully, then this money will be reallocated in shares and goes back to the investors in the form of a share. Because what Tőkeportál aims to introduce is the equity-based crowdfunding. So in comparison to Kickstarter, where you see something, whatever, new kind of, what is this? Tissue, whatever clever tissues, and you fall in love with this and you invest or you back it with $5, then you get it delivered to your house in 2 months, whatever, then that deal is done. You got what you wanted, so there was no particular risk involved in your transaction. But once this tissue producer company goes global and introduces their 3-5 year business model where they enter the global tissue market and even at the moon, then you would not get the tissue in the end, but you can invest in their shares. And in this case already you take on a huge risk as it's only a startup, and it's a huge challenge whether they would be able to deliver their business plan as they promised it. So equity-based crowdfunding, just like in any angel investment or VC investment, is risky. It bears the same risk profile like in any angel or VC investment. Just because the startup's business model is of course not yet proven, it's a good plan, it's a validated plan, but as time passes it will turn out whether it is successful or not. Just as in angel or in VC investment, you can as well lose all your money that you invest in it. Whereas at Kickstarter, when you got this special tissue, then you are happy and use it as you want. Nevertheless, there was a huge story. I'm sure you all know it doesn't occur to me, that Kickstarter campaign, Oculus Rift, the glass, the VR glass. Oculus Rift launched the Kickstarter campaign to be able to produce their first glasses back in 2012. They pulled in more than $1 million US, which was at that time a huge campaign. They had 10 types of perks, it's called. If you invest $5, you don't get nothing. You just supported their campaign. When you invest $100, you get a T-shirt. When you invest $200, then you get a T-shirt and whatever card and a smile from one of the managers, whatever. And if you invest $1,000, doesn't matter what I'm saying. I think it was the top was that $400. Then you could receive the Oculus Rift's first prototypes. So let's say you invested $400 and you got the Oculus Rift, and that was it. You used it or not, you threw it away or not, but all you got was the product itself. In 2 years, in less than 2 years, Facebook bought it up for $2 billion. You know what those guys who just received the T-shirt said? Why they couldn't invest in Oculus Rift. So they lost, they had their opportunity loss of several thousands of dollars at that time. So what we argue for is that once you just don't, that it's better to invest in a company that produces the product and get maybe a special preference that you get a discount on the product, then only buying the product, because then you miss the chance of gaining that much money, like in the case of Oculus Rift. And there are several stories all over the market. And several companies who once started to crowdfund themselves go to the stock market already today, in a few years' time. So that's a good launch, that's a good start of how to become later on a listed company. Once you start to to attract capital in this public way, then you get accustomed to this public accountancy and to this kind of corporate governance that would then enable you to go public later on. Much easier than if you get in a you start your business in a traditional way. This is just a short story of Tőkeportál itself, because insofar I more or less spoke about crowdfunding in general. So there are 27 member states of the EU, and in more than 20 out of them, crowdfunding is already existing. And what it makes me very sad, because when I was there when the Budapest Stock Exchange was reopened, and that was a sign of the system regime, that was the proven sign, and this is what a complete West was here. I'm sure some of you remember that everybody was here from all over the world, ran for the first public issued e-boost share. That price increased to the threefold on the first day. It was issued at 3,600 forints and reached 12,400 within a day. Because that was a miracle that the Budapest Stock Exchange was reopened, and it's the proof that the market economy was just reborn in Hungary. So we keep on saying that ever since, that Budapest was the first to open the stock exchange, and it will be the last to open the crowdfunding market, but I do hope that it's going to be a successful opening at least, and we have been able to learn from the failures of the others in the West.